All right, this is COMP391, Intro to Game and Simulation. And we're week 2. I guess it's lesson 2 because it's like we're on day 2, if you will. And we're hitting, what was that? Oh, yeah? That's okay. Sign up week 3, no problem. I'm going to have to redo the tally anyway. Don't worry about it. Because I've got because for week 2, actually, for week 1, I only got you guys to sign in one day, and probably going to get you to sign in both days. Okay, so yeah, so again, we're week 2, and it's day 2, and it's like kind of like our part 3, if you will, of lesson 2. And part 3, we're going to talk about our first assignment. I've put it up on eCentennial for you, so if you go to eCentennial for a second, let's take a look at it together. Right, it's a kind of a skeleton more than anything else. Let's go there. Take a look what I've written here. So you go to eCentennial and you hit your course there. It's under the Dropbox. So if you look at Dropbox, thank you, sir. If you look at Dropbox, there's assignment 1, which is 5 meshes. That's what it says. You see that? Assignment 1, 5 meshes under Dropbox. Yeah. So again, everything we do here in the course is all electronic, right? So there's no paper, none of that stuff's going to happen, right? Which makes sense, right? Because we're doing game, kind of almost like game development design at this stage and understanding games. So if I look inside the Dropbox, it gives you on the bottom, whoops, let me go back. On the bottom, it should say a bit of instructions of what to do. Let me just open this up for you so you can see it. So again, value is 10%, due Friday, May 29th at midnight, which is 2 weeks out, right, at midnight. And I said using Blender, create 5 meshes for your game, right, so 5. One of them has to be some kind of avatar, vehicle, player, whatever. You know, make your own thing. Whatever the kind of game you want to make for this course, right? There's no game project necessarily, but we're going to get you to do stuff with games later on. So this is almost like I want each assignment to build on the other assignments. So you have your elements, your game meshes, if you will, that you're going to replicate and use over and over again. So when I say 5 meshes, this is the minimum amount that I want you to make for 2 weeks from now. You can choose to make more for bonus points, right? You can choose to make more because maybe your game is going to require other things. So think about a game you want to make, 3D or 2D, whatever you want to make it, Blender, but you need some kind of assets. And what we're doing is you're creating some of these assets now for this first assignment, right? So again, your first one should be some kind of avatar, something that represents your player, right? Whatever it's going to be. Whatever style you want to make the game, this is what this first one is going to be. It's your choice. Second one is 2 obstacles, some kind of wall, tower, trees, rocks, something that makes sense that you're going to make that you're willing to replicate, something that's replicatable, right? So it's not going to be something that you use once, an obstacle or whatever. Don't worry about making levels necessarily because we're going to talk about level design later on, right? As we go towards the forward in the course, right? So just obstacles, like I said, walls, towers, trees, something, right? And then some kind of enemy, like maybe an enemy vehicle, an enemy player, something that's going to basically come against you in some way. In the beginning, we may only need to avoid this enemy, right? It may not be something like where you, it may not shoot at you or anything like that, just something that you avoid, right? And then a basic landscape. Now, we haven't talked about all of these elements. There's going to be pieces in here that we're going to learn how to do over the next 2 weeks or so anyway, right? So if there's something you don't know how to do, don't worry about it because my expectation is over the next week or so, we're going to talk about all the stuff you need to make your assignment go, right? Each of your meshes must have materials applied to them, all right? So there's no necessarily, there's no texturing involved. And we'll talk about what materials are today a little bit, right? And you must also select an appropriate lighting for your main scene. So you're going to have a scene, each scene we're going to talk about in Blender, and there's got to be a little bit of lighting that lights up your objects. Each object should have its own blend file. So don't try and put all your objects in one big file. That's bad, right? Why? Because you may choose to import them separately, and if you put them all together, it makes it more challenging for you to do that. They can have their own layer if that's what you want to have, but I recommend you put them separately in their own files for now to make it easier for you. So it means you have to start off a new Blender file every time. Create a new Blender image, then you set your lighting for that thing, and see how it's going to look. So make sure it works for you, right? The meshes you include with your submission must be your own. So you can't download and modify something that's out there already. So please don't do that. By the way, it's easy to tell. If you download something and modify it, I can tell very, very easily. Please do not download and import any images, like I said. Again, this assignment will demonstrate your basic knowledge of Blender. Your meshes do not have to be artistically beautiful, so you're not an artist, right? However, care should be taken so that each of your meshes are part of a common theme. So don't try and, if you're going to make a sci-fi game, don't add like, fantasy swords in there unless that's the kind of game you're making, right? So that's the kind of stuff I want you to make. I'm not asking you to make weapons, right? So I'm not saying, hey, make weapons, right? Because maybe weapons aren't part of your game. They might be these bonus meshes you want to make that you're going to be using, something you're going to pick up. You might have additional items to pick up at some point. We might include those in a future assignment. You may want to make those now. It's up to you. And your landscape right now, like I said, is very basic. I'm not asking you to texture it at all. It's just materials for now, right? Which means you have to color it. That's all we're doing. All right, so we'll talk about that. Any questions around the requirements here? Again, so if you make 5 meshes, and if the assignment's worth 10%, that means 2.5% for each mesh. They're each equally weighted. It's not like your landscape is going to be more weight than your vehicle or your enemy, right? Each one of them has equal weight. So I'm going to be marking you on, what does the mesh look like? Did you take care to make this mesh, or just put, I don't want to see, a cube as your mesh. That'd be bad, right? So do something with this thing to make it your own. Make sure that this thing is part of your theme. When you submit, I don't say that here, but when you submit, what I'd like you to do is talk to me about if you're thinking about making some kind of game for this course, right? As an example, what kind of game are you thinking about making? Talk about it a little bit. You may not have a lot of ideas, but maybe you're thinking about more of a genre. Is it more of an RPG type game? You're not going to be able to make the whole thing in this course. We don't have time. We only have 14 weeks together, and there's no programming, right? So you got to be careful there. Are you going to make more of a shooter game, platform game? What kind of game are you thinking about making? 3/4 down? Are you going to make it a 2D kind of game where you make your meshes and you're only going to use your meshes in 2D? Like what kind of game you're going to make, right? So again, it's got to kind of flow. So if your meshes don't flow with your game, it makes no sense, right? Again, please don't download anything and install them. These all have to be original stuff that you make on your own. Again, I don't expect you to be artists. Questions around this? Yeah.
It seems pretty hard.
Yeah? It's not hard. You have 2 weeks to come put some stuff together.
So we were trying to make a face last time.
Yeah. How much time have you spent on Blender over the last 2 weeks?
I think just an hour.
That's right. That's right. So that's what I'm saying. So this is going to give you an opportunity to actually work and make some stuff, right? Don't worry, I'm not a hard marker, right? What I'd like you to do is apply yourself and try, right? The idea here is to try to make some of this stuff. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just I want you to see if you were gonna make some simple objects. Let's make some simple objects that apply to these things that I'm asking you to make. It's not that hard. You just have to apply yourself. Yes.
So how much of this game is expected to be done by the end of the course?
I'm not asking you to make a game by the end of the course. Each assignment will give you different piece parts.
Okay.
So you'll be able to make each. There's no project, right?
Yeah.
So so we have 4 assignments and a bunch of tests, right? So what I'm asking you to do is each assignment is going to kind of lend itself to a little more of a piece part to the thing that we're going to come up with at the end, right? Your tests also may lend to that as well. So there might be a practical piece to your test, and I'm getting you to practice with your assignment where it's not a timed exercise, right? So because the test is a timed exercise, you only have 3 hours to do something, right? Whereas an assignment, you don't have 3 hours. You have a bunch of a couple weeks to do things, right? But if you're really concerned about like what your question was, sorry, what's your name again?
Matt.
Igor. For your concern, Matt, I hear what you're saying, right? But Igor, for you, don't worry. The idea here is this is going to force you to practice. If I don't force you to practice, you're not going to use Blender. You're not going to do everything, right? Again, I don't expect you to be an artist. This is not this exercise. This is for you to understand 3D. For you to understand the tool that we're going to need, because we're going to use some of these kind of tools in Unity, right? If you don't understand 3D now, Unity is going to hit you in the head, right? So that's why I'm forcing you to do it now. It's not because I want you to fail. You're going to do okay as long as you submit something and you try. That's the most important thing for me here, right? Remember, the things that you don't know how to do, you can always ask other people in the class too, hey, what did you do here? How did you do this? How do I do that? There's tutorials online, tons of tutorials on Blender from now until, I couldn't show you all the piece parts of Blender on my own. How many tutorials there are out there, right? So it's not like there's not enough material out there to show you what to do. So don't worry about it, right? But think about, if I want to make a game, simple game, right? And I'm talking about a simple game, right? We're gonna create something that maybe has, at the end of the day, I'd like you to come up with something like, maybe with a score. And there might be a class that says, okay, so remember, bring your assets from assignment 1, and today we're going to work with those assets. I might have that happen. So I need you to work on the assets in order for you to have them, right? So that's why assignment 1 is important to start you off, right? Any other questions around that? Again, just to kind of reiterate and just to answer what Igor was saying, right? I'd like you to attempt. I'd like you to try. I'd like you to try and work something where it's part of your own style. Remember, if this is what you're going to do, if gaming is what you want to do because you're in the gaming program, you've got to start working with some kind of meshes. I don't expect you to be artists because you're developers, right? That's what you're here for. You're into the interactive gaming program, but you need to understand meshes and be able to work with them, right, in order for you to create games. Any other questions around this? All right, so that's assignment 1, and it's going to be due, like I said, in a couple weeks, Friday, May 29th at midnight. I'll stop recording this one and we'll go on to the next one.